Most people miss this totally. Not only it's rare, but also nothing about it feels important in the moment. You stand up, leave the room for a short time, barely thinking about it. It's normal, automatic. But underneath that routine, there's an assumption you don't ask. That you won't be alone. That your dog will follow. That quiet, familiar sound just behind you. The one you've learned to expect without realizing. And then, nothing comes. You take a few steps, and something feels slightly off. Not wrong, just incomplete. You turn back, and there they are. Exactly where you left them. Lying down. Watching. Still. Not asleep. Not distracted. Just there. Most people read this moment quickly. Too quickly. They label it without thinking. Maybe your dog is tired. Maybe they're uninterested. Maybe they just don't feel like getting up. It looks like distance. It feels like a small break in connection. But what if that interpretation is completely wrong? What if that moment, the one that felt like absence, is actually something else entirely? Something quieter. Something more precise. Something that doesn't rely on movement to exist. Because for a dog, staying where they are is not always a sign that they've disconnected from you. Sometimes, it's the clearest sign that they haven't. Presence without movement. Humans are deeply tied to movement when it comes to connection. We approach what we care about. We close distance. We follow, respond, adjust. For us, closeness is something that is constantly reinforced through action. If something matters, we move toward it. If someone leaves, we feel the separation immediately. But a dog's experience of presence is built differently. For them, connection doesn't disappear the moment you step out of the room. It doesn't collapse just because there's a wall between you. Instead, it stretches. It extends beyond what is physically visible, carried through patterns they have learned without ever needing to think about them. The sound of your footsteps, the rhythm of your movement, the subtle timing of how long you are usually gone before you return. These are not small details to a dog. They are structure. So when your dog remains where they are instead of following, it's not necessarily a break in connection. It can be the opposite. They are relying on a version of you that still exists in their perception, a version that hasn't fully left. In that moment, your presence hasn't ended. It has simply shifted into something less visible, but still intact. And because of that, movement becomes unnecessary. The space that doesn't break. There is a kind of connection that doesn't need constant reinforcement to remain stable. It isn't fragile. It doesn't require immediate response. It doesn't collapse under small distances or short absences. Dogs, over time, begin to live inside this kind of connection, not because they are taught to, not because they are trained to stay or to wait, but because repetition builds something reliable. They notice how you move through your space. They learn the patterns of your behavior in ways that are almost impossible to see from the outside. The way you pause before leaving a room. The subtle differences between when you're stepping away briefly and when you're actually going somewhere else. The length of your absence, the predictability of your return. These details form something consistent, something dependable. And once that consistency is established, your dog no longer needs to respond to every small change. They don't need to follow every step you take, because the connection between you doesn't feel like it's at risk. It doesn't feel like something that could disappear just because you moved out of sight. So they stay, not out of indifference, but out of certainty. Waiting is not empty. From the outside, waiting often looks like nothing. A dog lying down, eyes partially open, body relaxed, almost motionless. It can appear passive, even disengaged, as if nothing is happening at all. But that stillness is deceptive, because what looks like inactivity is often a different kind of awareness. Not intense, not restless, not demanding, but continuous. A quiet form of attention that doesn't need to express itself through movement. Your dog isn't simply waiting for you to come back. They are maintaining a connection that, for them, hasn't fully paused. You are still part of their environment, even if you're not visible within it. They are not searching for you. They are not questioning your absence. They are holding a place for you within their awareness, in a way that remains stable over time. It's not dramatic. It doesn't look emotional in the way humans expect emotion to look. There's no urgency, no visible longing. But there is continuity, and that continuity is easy to miss if you're only looking for signs that are obvious. The delay before they move. And then there are the moments when they do follow. But even then, it rarely happens in the way people expect. There is often a delay, a pause that feels almost intentional. You leave the room, and instead of immediately getting up, your dog stays for a few seconds longer, watching, processing. Then, slowly, they move. That delay is not hesitation in the way humans experience hesitation. It's not uncertainty, it's assessment. Because following, for a dog, is not automatic. It's not a reflex that activates every time you move. It happens when something shifts in the connection they are maintaining, when the distance becomes something more than temporary, when the pattern changes just enough to signal that your absence might last longer than expected. Only then does movement become necessary. And when it does, it's deliberate, not rushed, not reactive, but precise. What you've been misreading. If you only measure connection through visible action, it becomes very easy to misunderstand what you're seeing. A dog that doesn't follow might look distant. A dog that stays behind might seem less attached. A dog that waits quietly might appear less engaged. But those interpretations are based on a human framework, one that depends heavily on movement, response, and constant reinforcement. Dogs don't always operate within that framework. Their version of presence is often quieter, more stable, less dependent on immediate expression. It exists even when it isn't being actively shown. It holds its shape without needing to prove itself in every moment. So what you're witnessing when your dog stays behind is not the absence of connection. It's a version of connection that doesn't need to announce itself. And because it doesn't announce itself, it's often overlooked. The moment you start to notice. There's a shift that happens once you begin to see this clearly. The same moment repeats. You stand up, you leave, and again, your dog doesn't follow. But this time, it feels different. Not because they changed anything, but because you did. You pause, even just for a second longer than usual. You look back, not to check if they're coming, but to understand what they're doing. And what you notice is subtle. They're not disengaged. Their body hasn't turned away. Their attention hasn't fully left you. It's still there, quietly anchored, even without movement. As if the connection didn't need to be carried forward, because it never actually stayed behind. And once you see that, it becomes harder to interpret their stillness as absence. What stays without moving? The next time you leave the room, and your dog doesn't follow, there will be a moment, small, almost unnoticeable, where you're tempted to interpret it, to assign meaning to it quickly, the way people always do. But if you slow that moment down, even slightly, you might start to see something different. They're still there. Not just physically, but attentively. Not moving, but not disconnected. Not following, but not separate. What looks like distance may not be distance at all. It may be a form of presence that doesn't require motion to exist. A kind of connection that remains steady, even when nothing is happening on the surface. And once you begin to notice it, that stillness no longer feels empty. It feels intentional.